You wake up and something is wrong. Your body feels heavier than it should. Your throat burns. Your joints ache in a way that has nothing to do with yesterday's movement. You are sick. And the first thing your modern brain does is reach for options: a pharmacy, a doctor, an app that delivers medicine to your door in 40 minutes. Now take all of that away. It is 70,000 years ago. You are somewhere in what will eventually become the Middle East. The group you travel with has maybe 25 people. There are no doctors, no antibiotics, no understanding of what a bacterium or a virus even is. But someone in your group is sick, feverish, unable to walk, unable to hunt, unable to contribute. And what happens next will tell you something about the deepest roots of human compassion, and something about how medicine was born long before anyone called it that. The answer is more sophisticated than you might expect. Start with the body itself. Because your ancient ancestors had one advantage they did not fully understand but used extremely well. The human immune system is extraordinary. A fever, that brutal, uncomfortable rise in core temperature, is not the illness. It is the body's deliberate response to illness. Raising internal temperature creates an environment hostile to many pathogens. Certain bacteria reproduce more slowly at 39 degrees than at 37. Certain immune cells become more active at elevated temperatures. The fever your ancestors experienced and feared was, in most cases, their body winning the fight. They did not know this, but they knew through thousands of generations of observation that most fevers broke. That people who were sick one week were sometimes walking again the next. That knowledge shaped everything that followed. The oldest and most consistent form of prehistoric medicine is not a plant. It is rest and care. At Shanidar Cave in what is now northern Iraq, archaeologists made one of the most emotionally significant finds in the entire history of paleoanthropology. Among a group of Neanderthal skeletons buried there approximately 60,000 years ago, one individual, known as Shanidar I, showed extensive evidence of healed injuries: a crushing blow to the left side of the skull that likely caused partial blindness, a withered right arm, probably amputated or lost below the elbow during life, healed fractures across the body. This individual was severely disabled. He could not have hunted, could not have gathered effectively, could not have defended himself, or contributed to the group's survival in the ways that mattered most in that environment. He survived anyway, for years. That is not an accident of luck. That is care. Someone, multiple someones probably, made the deliberate decision to feed him, shelter him, protect him when he could not protect himself. Erik, the paleoanthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, who has studied the Shanidar remains extensively, concluded that this level of survival with this degree of disability requires sustained social support. The group chose to carry someone who could not carry his own weight. That is medicine in its most fundamental form. Not the pharmacological kind, but the human kind. But they also used plants, and they used them with a precision that is still surprising. The human relationship with medicinal plants is ancient. Very ancient. Researchers studying dental calculus, the hardened plaque preserved on ancient teeth, have found chemical signatures of specific plant compounds in individuals going back hundreds of thousands of years. Some of these compounds have known pharmacological effects. Yarrow, for example, contains compounds that reduce inflammation. Ephedra contains ephedrine, a stimulant that opens airways and was used in traditional medicine across dozens of cultures on multiple continents independently. Groundsel has been documented in traditional wound care practices worldwide. How did prehistoric people discover these properties? Not through the scientific method, through something older, through systematic observation across generations. Someone ate this plant and felt better. Someone else remembered. Someone taught their child. The knowledge accumulated over thousands of years of careful watching. Which plants reduced fever, which stopped bleeding, which killed the pain enough to sleep. This was not guesswork. It was empirical knowledge, transmitted without writing, carried in memory and practice. Amanda Henry, a paleoanthropologist at Leiden University who has studied plant use in ancient hominins through the chemical analysis of fossilized teeth and tools, has noted that the range of plants consumed by Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens was far wider than simple nutrition would require. Some plants were bitter, calorie-poor, and not particularly filling, but they were eaten anyway, deliberately, consistently. That pattern suggests selection for something other than food value. It suggests selection for effect. Here's what the scene likely looked like when someone fell seriously ill. The group stops moving, or slows. This is a significant cost. Mobility is survival in a nomadic world. But the calculation was apparently made again and again across tens of thousands of years that leaving the sick behind was not the automatic choice. The sick person is moved to a sheltered location. A cave alcove, a shaded spot under an overhang, somewhere protected from wind and rain. Someone stays with them. In many documented hunter-gatherer societies, studied by anthropologists over the last century, the Kongsan of southern Africa, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Batek of Malaysia. When a community member falls seriously ill, at least one other person remains with them constantly, not rotating, staying. The word for this in some languages translates roughly as watching over. Water matters more than almost anything else. Dehydration accelerates every illness. It drives fever higher. It weakens the immune response. It kills people who might otherwise survive. Your ancient ancestors did not know the biochemistry, but they knew the behavior. A sick person needs to drink. The people around them would have ensured that happened, bringing water, cooling the skin with wet hands, or wet bark during a high fever, keeping the mouth from drying out. And then there were the plants again. Willowbark. The inner bark of the white willow tree contains salicin, a compound that the human body converts to salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. Across cultures on every inhabited continent, willowbark or plants containing similar salicin compounds appear in traditional medical practice as a treatment for fever and pain. The ancient Egyptians documented it, traditional Chinese medicine documented it, indigenous healers in North America, South America, Africa, and Oceania all independently identified it. This is not coincidence. This is convergent discovery. Multiple cultures independently finding the same solution because the solution works. And the knowledge that willowbark reduces fever almost certainly predates written records by tens of thousands of years. Charcoal appears at prehistoric campsites in quantities that go beyond fuel use. Small, processed pieces. In some cases, chewed. Activated charcoal binds to certain toxins in the gut and carries them out of the body. It is still used in modern emergency medicine for specific kinds of poisoning. Whether prehistoric people understood the mechanism is irrelevant. They had learned the outcome. Clay was applied to wounds and skin inflammation at sites across Europe and Africa. Certain clays have antimicrobial properties. They leach iron and other minerals that interfere with bacterial cell function. A 2018 study published in the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents confirmed that specific natural clays kill antibiotic-resistant bacteria on contact. Your ancestors were using these materials not because they understood microbiology, but because they had observed across generations that wounds packed with certain clay healed better than wounds left open. The most important thing to understand is this. Prehistoric medicine was not one person guessing alone. It was collective memory in action. The elder who had seen this fever before, who remembered what was given to the last person who had it, who remembered that the person recovered or did not. This is pharmacology without paper. Trial recorded in human memory and transmitted through story and demonstration. When anthropologists study isolated hunter-gatherer communities today, communities that have had minimal contact with pharmaceutical medicine, they consistently find medical knowledge systems of significant complexity. Plant preparations, wound care protocols, isolation practices for certain contagious illnesses. The sophistication varies, but the sophistication exists. And sometimes they knew when they could not help. The bones tell this story too. At sites across the prehistoric world, paleoanthropologists have found burial evidence that speaks directly to how ancient humans handled death from illness. Bodies placed carefully, oriented deliberately. Ochre pigment scattered across remains. Objects placed near the body. At Sungir in Russia, 34,000 years ago, 2 children were buried head to head, covered in thousands of ivory beads that would have taken years to make. Whatever killed these children, illness, injury, something else, the response of the group was not to abandon the remains. It was to invest enormous time and care into how those remains were treated. That investment is not pragmatic. It serves no survival function. It is grief, made visible in the archaeological record. It is the expression of a loss that the group felt, which means the sick person, before they became the buried person, was felt, was known, was someone specific in the minds of the people around them. Here's the thing about what your ancestors did when someone got sick. They did what you do. They stayed. They watched. They brought water. They tried the things that had worked before. They sat with the person through the worst of the night. They told them, in whatever gesture or sound or touch served for language, that they were not alone. And sometimes the fever broke and the person recovered and the group moved on together. And sometimes it did not. The next time you are sick, truly sick, feverish, and aching and unable to move, and someone brings you something to drink and sits nearby without being asked and checks on you in the night, that is not a modern behavior. That impulse is at least 60,000 years old, probably much older. It ran in your lineage before Homo sapiens had a name, before language had words for illness or for care. It ran in you long before you were born.